don't know why I have this weird looming feeling. I'm just like, what did I do?
Maybe we just need to adjust your budget. By adjust, I mean triple it.
Some people are like, oh my god, I cannot wait to see your wedding. And I'm like, ooh, like you didn't get the memo. I'm not having one.
Gen Z is not doing weddings and the wedding industry is dying.
Weddings are overrated, and that's coming from a 2025 bride.
There is a major shift happening in the wedding industry right now, as we are starting to witness traditional weddings become something of the past.
Micro wedding. Done, sold.
I think I literally just want to go to the local courthouse and put a ring on it.
Eloping is the biggest flex in the world, and you cannot change my mind. It's giving I don't care what anyone thinks of me.
I'd say one of the things I love the most about Gen Z is they love personalization. They love doing something that's unique. It's based on vibes.
Marriage is what brings us together today, or more realistically, the lack thereof.
Marriage.
Because as we're seeing, people just aren't really getting married as much anymore, or they're at least pushing back hard against the traditional wedding industry, which makes sense as it's right up Gen Z's alley to reject traditionalism and refuse to subscribe to something just because it's the way it's always been. And it's honestly really refreshing and needed, because when you really think about it, the entire wedding industry is built on expensive, consumer-driven traditions that are ultimately optional. And in just the past 5 years, we've already started to see these cracks form. Weddings are getting simplified, elopements are on the rise, and standard vendors are becoming chuggy. Basically, if Gen Z is getting married, they're doing it on their own terms, choosing what actually resonates with them and discarding what doesn't. But that raises a question that we will address today of whether weddings as we know it will survive this pushback and evolve, or if they're on their way out altogether. Okay, to start, have you guys heard of the show Marriage or Mortgage? I only know of it because it was always playing at my chiropractor's office in like 2021, so I would watch it while waiting for my appointment. And I mean, reality TV isn't supposed to make sense necessarily, but this show was just so ridiculous that I had to bring it up. If you haven't heard of this masterpiece, essentially each episode follows one engaged couple who has a set budget, the same amount you'd spend on either a wedding or a down payment. Then a wedding planner and real estate agent try and win them over by exploring both options. The wedding planner tries to formulate the wedding of their dreams, and the real estate agent shows them the beautiful homes that they could buy with the same budget. By the end of the show, the couple has to choose whether they want to go for the marriage option or mortgage option, as the title says. The kicker is they always present both sides like a once-in-a-lifetime deal by stacking perks, like upgraded wedding vendors and bonus features, or on the real estate side of things, incredible bargains like a discount, or added upgrades like a fence.
I want a ranch fountain.
A ranch? You're not drinking. No.
The ranch. I could.
Oh.
Now, being a viewer of my channel, I assume you have the same reaction to this as myself and this Reddit user who says, why the f would you choose the wedding? Which I think was probably the rage bait the producers were hoping for to hook viewers, because the choice should be obvious between a single day event and a long-term investment. But alas, at least every time I watched the show from the waiting room, they always chose the wedding.
1, 2, 3, wedding.
Are you f***ing serious?
Like every episode, they come in with 30 grand in hand and throw it all on one extravaganza of a day.
I staged this room especially for you.
You like it?
Love it.
We decided to choose a wedding.
Interestingly, as I was reading through that Reddit thread, someone did say that they suspect that the couples probably go into it with no intent of getting the house. They just want the discounted wedding, which I think is a very valid theory. But also one person said that a better show would have been Wedding or Honeymoon, which I just had to include because I feel like that would be such a good show. Like I would 100% watch that. But getting back on topic, the show did unfortunately only last one season. For good reason though, because in today's economic climate, I don't think that viewers value the excessive spending and consumption on these frivolous weddings anymore. Like most people in their 20s today aren't picking between a down payment or a wedding when there's barely any money to start with.
There's not going to be
a wedding,
you stupid there won't even be a house.
But this show perfectly illustrated how far our mindsets towards weddings have changed in just the past 5 years. Because the TLC dreams of the 2010s are essentially dead, leaving Gen Z to forge a whole new way of thinking about weddings. Because literally, who has the money for weddings these days? Spoiler, not many.
I just really don't understand, how are people affording weddings? How are people having these crazy like $100,000 weddings? I've been to a few weddings in the past few years where I'm like, where did you get this money?
U.S. News conducted a nationwide survey of 1,200 Americans who got married in the past year and held a wedding ceremony and reception. They found that over half of newlyweds took on debt to pay for their wedding. And among those who borrowed money from credit cards, bank loans, and family members, 48% said they weren't expecting to go into debt when they initially planned their wedding, and 42% regret going into debt over wedding expenses. And this makes sense, right? Like, along with everything else in our lives, inflation has hit the wedding industry so hard, to the point where the average cost of a wedding has gone up 18% in just the past 5 years, up to an average of $38,000.
I just got a quote from a photographer for $35,000 for my wedding in North Carolina. North Carolina.
And so 75% of Gen Z and millennial couples say it's too expensive to get married in the current economy. And so many Gen Zers are just giving up completely on weddings because they don't have $30,000 to casually spend. Which, on a side note, sounds so high, but when you start breaking down the costs, it does make sense. Like when food prices range from $125 to $500 per person, it adds up really quickly. But the thing is, less people paying to tie the knot doesn't necessarily mean prices will go down. If anything, it's more likely that the wedding industry will shift towards catering to the upper class, becoming an exclusively luxury market. So where does that leave the average Joe looking to get married? Well, as a wild twist, one option some people are now considering in an attempt to cover costs are weddings that are pay to enter. Yes, you heard that correctly. As said here, planning a wedding has become so expensive that some couples are asking their guests to pay to attend their special day. Hassan Ahmed, 23, is charging his guests $450 for a ticket to his wedding next year in Houston. Mr. Ahmed said he hadn't heard back from many of his 125 guests, but he has already spent over $100,000 on the wedding, including deposits for the venue, the DJ, and the photographer. In a video on TikTok, he said that he was confused by the response, noting that many of his guests had spent more money on Beyonce or Chris Brown tickets. Which, yes, sounds so unhinged, but in an attempt to wrap my head around this and try and understand where these people are coming from, I guess as long as you're giving your guests an experience that's so extravagant that it justifies the cost, maybe it could work. Or maybe the ceremony is free for everyone, but the reception is reserved for paid attendance, so any income can get to celebrate. I don't know, there's a lot of ingrained cultural norms that prevent my brain from accepting this idea. But all this to say that when an entire generation can't afford weddings, then the entire industry is at serious risk, which may not be that big of a deal, as weddings have always changed with the times, as each generation puts its own spin on traditions and values. After all, weddings weren't always this over-the-top biggest day of your life experience that we know today. No, that was a result of the post-World War II booming economy, giving the middle class disposable income, as well as the push from wedding media, specifically TV, selling these big budget standards. Shows like Say Yes to the Dress, For Weddings, and My Fair Wedding, all altering our expectations of what a wedding should look like and how much they should cost. I know personally as a preteen, I loved Say Yes to the Dress. Looking back though, it's actually hilarious how much my sister and I would literally scoff at the cheap brides who only had a $2,000 budget for a dress, because in the TLC world, only a Panina Tournée ball gown would do.
Well,
you look like a bird.
Oh, I am saying yes 1,000 times to this dress.
Moving on, in the midst of researching this video, it was actually super interesting learning where all these wedding traditions came from. For one, as you probably know, back in the day, people could and did marry simply by saying so. There was no specific formula or ritual, and they didn't even need the authority of a priest or permission from parents. Beyond that though, brides wearing white is a recent phenomenon as well, as they used to simply just wear the best dress that they had. The flower girls back in the day carried bundles of wheat rather than flowers because it symbolized fertility, which brings the question why they weren't called wheat girls instead of flower girls. Moving on, the tradition of bridesmaids in matching dresses wasn't just for the aesthetic, but goes back to Roman times where they thought it confused evil spirits, threatening to curse the bride. I didn't realize demons could be so easily tricked by a coordinated wardrobe, but I'll accept it. On a similar note about protecting brides, the bridal veil wasn't originally meant for this dramatic reveal to the groom, rather also used to protect brides from evil spirits. And the last fun fact I have for you is that the bride's bouquet once again didn't consist of flowers, but herbs like garlic and rosemary to again ward off those pesky evil spirits. Basically the equivalent of brides wearing a garlic necklace to keep vampires away. Literally, why were they so scared of evil spirits getting in the way of a bride making it down the aisle? Oh my god, was it because there were so many non-consensual weddings that runaway brides were common enough to create a whole cultural lore that spiritual warfare must be at play? Because why else would a bride run away? I don't know. That would be an interesting idea. But as fun as this history lesson has been, for me anyway, maybe, getting back to how it relates to Gen Z, this is the generation best known, again, for pushing back against traditions. So if the garlic bouquet hadn't already been phased out, Gen Z would have definitely gotten the job done. In fact, rejecting modern wedding culture is their bread and butter these days, as nothing is off the table from being cut out of the itinerary. Because many still want to have weddings, just on their own terms.
I'd say one of the things I love the most about Gen Z is they're kind of by default pretty untrusting of the establishment and societal norms. They love personalization. They love doing something that's unique, based on vibes, not just old stale traditions.
It's becoming about the experience and about the couple more than anything else. And I think that's what you could take away from weddings and what Gen Z is doing to weddings.
So I think at this point we've all heard that public Wi-Fi isn't safe, but what does that really mean? Like, how bad could it be if you just hop onto an untrusted network? Well, pretty bad, because the thing is, hackers can just easily grab your login details when you're connected and use that information to access your email, social media, or even your banking accounts. And this actually happens to real people. I just had one of my old emails compromised, as Google told me, which was really unsettling. Now, thankfully, it was an old email address with nothing important connected to it, but I still had to go through all the web pages associated with it and either change the passwords or delete the accounts. It was a whole headache to go through and a waste of an evening. And that's just one reason why a VPN is a non-negotiable for me these days, because while I don't know how that email got compromised, I'm definitely not going to risk my current data from being exposed to someone sitting at my favorite coffee shop with me. And that's where today's sponsor Surfshark comes in. With just one tap, your data is encrypted, so no one can come spy on you when you're online. And they do more than just allow you to browse privately. Surfshark also blocks ad and malware that get in your way and lets you switch your virtual location, giving you access to shows on Netflix that aren't available in your country. So if you would like to try out Surfshark, just head to the link in the description, surfshark.com/embers, or use code embers at checkout to get 4 extra months of Surfshark VPN. Okay, so let's talk about exactly how weddings as we know it are changing. For Gen Z, who once again are struggling with the rising costs and basic expenses, this means they're becoming more selective with their wedding spending and asking themselves what's really important for their special day.
So I posted this video, said that I didn't really want to do the big venue thing, I didn't want to do the big dress thing, I didn't want to necessarily entertain people, I had nothing to prove, and I just wanted to nix the whole wedding planning altogether. And that's exactly what we did. We canceled our venue. I decided not to wear the dress. We canceled our photographer. We literally had like a 7-day trip planned for like all of our closest friends and family. It just got too logistical and I was like, I don't want to do any of it. So we have a courthouse date. We're getting married on December 12th. We are going to my favorite restaurant after in town, like all 13 of us that are gonna be at the courthouse. Then everyone's coming over to our house, our friends and family, and we're catering. My soon-to-be hubby has a really awesome barbecue restaurant. We're just gonna cater barbecue and play like charades and cards, and it's gonna be awesome. And I have my friends taking pictures of me on my wedding day with my camera. Can't wait.
More couples are picking and choosing which traditions resonate with them and which don't. They're rewriting vows, blending cultural rituals, and opting out of things like bouquet toss if they don't feel authentic. It's less about doing all the standard parts and more about creating meaningful, intentional moments. For example, some say it's bad luck to see your spouse before your ceremony, but Gen Z couples are ignoring that superstition and getting ready with their partner instead. Which, as silly as it is, sounds like such a radical idea. Again, growing up with with traditional weddings where like you're not supposed to see each other. But besides moving away from large wedding parties, first dances, cake cutting, and long speeches, they're also breathing new life into elopements.
But now, like, yeah, I went from like literally like one extreme to the next. Like I was gonna have like a super like lavish, like over the top wedding. And now I'm like, I think I literally just want to go to the local courthouse and put a ring on it.
What was once seen as a cop-out or selfish way of going about getting married is now being rebranded as financially smart and an intentional way of having a meaningful wedding. As we see in the surveys, over 60% of engaged couples would consider eloping. This Gen Zer Rachel shares about her elopement. There were no bridesmaids, no flower girl, no maid of honor, no best man. There was no altar party, no toasts, no speeches. And you know what? It was great. There's absolutely no reason to hemorrhage that kind of coin on a wedding when so many people are being evicted, becoming houseless, relapsing, suffering from lack of collective care. We spent less than $1,000 on our nuptials, including my $31 dress from eBay. But to go back to how Gen Z is rewriting the trends in the industry, micro weddings, for example, are the next step up from elopement, but without the travel, I guess. Micro weddings, as the name suggests, consist of a smaller guest list, usually between 20 to 50 people, while still including most traditional wedding elements like a formal ceremony and a reception with dinner and dancing.
So let's talk about why we're doing a micro wedding with just our immediate family. So we were originally going to elope, and then we decided to make like a list of things that were really important to us. And on my importance list, one was family, photography, destination, but also less people means less money. So you get to do more with what you want. But I think for me, the most important part was that I'm spending money on things I actually want to do. And I'm also not forcing 100 and some people to come over to Europe to celebrate us. I'm only forcing 16.
It's all the fun of a big wedding, but make it cozier and more intimate. At a micro wedding, you can choose smaller venues, pay less in decorations, and of course, have less mouths to feed. The Knot also found that 4 in 10 couples are modifying previous wedding plans due to the economy, including 33% who cut out flowers and decorations and or cutting the guest list down to by around 29 people on average. The other nice thing about micro weddings is that it gives couples the opportunity to really analyze all the typical wedding elements, like in that quote, flowers, and decide what's meaningful enough to keep and what's optional. Like long gone are the days of bouquet and garter tosses, wedding parties beyond the best man and the maid of honor, the cake cutting, the choreographed dances, and all the rest of the fluff. They're just not blindly following the wedding script.
Like, no, just imagine. Oh my god, thank you so much for coming to my wedding. Oh my god, I haven't spoken to you in like 10 plus years. Like, how are you? How are things? Ooh, no, that's awkward. That's so awkward. No, it's almost like a slap in the face. It's like, oh my god, hi, I've never talked to you in so long because I quite literally don't even give a shit about you, but hi, come to my wedding. Like, no, I feel like weddings should be like, I should invite people that actually give a shit about me and I give a fuck about them.
And I have a few examples of couples who have done just that. We had a private courthouse ceremony and then went to a restaurant for cocktail hour and dinner. I purchased bulk flowers from my flower market and made my arrangements myself. We used a Spotify playlist and the venue played it through its speakers. After dinner, we went to the local saloon where drinks were on each guest. The following day, we hosted lunch at a winery and brought in sandwiches from a bakery. Does that not sound like the most charming and intimate celebration? We also have Caroline and Price from Austin. They had a backyard micro wedding that cost about $500. Caroline says a 9-person wedding can be just as intimate and special as a 100-person wedding. We felt so much love that night because it was intimate and I know every guest felt it too. Overall, I really just love that Gen Z is making the day their own. It's such a refreshing whiplash from the hyper-curated millennial weddings from the past few decades. Like the only thing millennials added to the wedding industry was boho flower headbands and Converse sneakers under their dresses. Oh, and the Edison bulb lights hanging everywhere. Which, first of all, no hate. I do believe that it's just an inevitable phenomenon that every generation will have something to look back on that feels cringy. Because honestly, millennials were just living their best to live, laugh, love lives, and I don't think we can blame them for that. Speaking of which, as I was writing this, I of course was thinking back to my own wedding from 2018, and I really thought like, okay, my wedding wasn't millennial coded, right? Until I actually went back to the pictures. Between the DIY welcome sign and the matching bridesmaids dresses and pocket squares, also the groomsmen shaved mustaches the morning of, and I'm just now realizing that was so millennial. And overall, the rustic aesthetic, like we literally had burlap table runners. Don't kid yourself, Ashley. But anyway, Gen Z is bringing weddings back to the basics with meaningful details and no fluff. But that is in fact not the whole story, and there's another cultural trend that might be having a larger impact on wedding traditions and their potential decline. So we need to address the fact that a large portion of Gen Z is foregoing weddings altogether, and not just because they're too expensive. Shown here, the median age for first marriage has also climbed to 30 for men and 28 for women. A Pew Research Center survey found that only 67% of high school seniors in 2023 said they were likely to get married someday.
I know I live in a bubble when I hear people talking about marriage like it's something to strive for. Because I'm like, I wasn't raised with that mindset.
Which I actually think is such an interesting mental shift, because even when I was in high school, everyone just assumed that they would get married eventually. But there are a few reasons for why the overall attitude towards marriage has changed. For one, people just straight up don't value marriage as much as previous generations.
I mean, marriage is pretty silly, right?
I mean, I think like if done well, it's nice. I think it's a nice thing. But
I think, I believe in the concept of being with someone, and having like a life partner. But the fact that all it takes to be like married is signing a piece of paper,
right,
with a witness there. Why do you need a witness?
Yeah, and it could just be some guy.
It could just be some rando off the street. Doesn't even have to be someone you know.
Yeah. And what I find interesting about that is how quickly the social stigma around singleness faded as millennials and Gen Z reframed marriage as a personal choice rather than a societal requirement. I guess we do still have some groups of people who really value marriage and the whole childless cat lady of it all.
By a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that they've made, and so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too.
But while yes, Gen Z still values relationships and commitment, going through the process of getting married doesn't carry the same weight for them, especially when they grew up with parents from the generation with the highest divorce rate, the ones who basically invented the statistic of 50% of marriages end in divorce. Now, while that statistic says more about what happens when a generation of women gains the freedom to leave bad marriages than about marriage itself, it's still definitely ingrained in Gen Z that they should think twice before rushing into marriage after witnessing firsthand the repercussions of divorce. This survey found almost half of those polled said they were afraid of potentially getting divorced in the future. And while 2/3 said it was intrusive to ask others about their marriage plans, 38% said they had felt judged in the past for not being married yet. But the other reason Gen Z is passing on marriage, and with that weddings, is because they don't have anyone to marry.
My mom asked me, Edward, when are you planning to get married? Mom, I already planned everything. I just can't find a girlfriend.
Years deep in the loneliness epidemic that is plaguing Gen Z, it's been found that the top reason single Americans gave for remaining single was not money, jobs, or even readiness for commitment, but that it's hard to find the right person to marry. To be clear, we aren't just talking about lonely 30-year-olds living in their parents' basement. Again, no offense, in this economy, it makes sense. But even young adults are already feeling these effects. It's visible in the survey data where the share of 12th graders who say they've dated has fallen from about 85% in the 1980s to less than 50% in the early 2020s, with that decline particularly steep in the past few years. Now, while we probably all know the usual suspects, like people spending too much time on their screens, that they don't spend any time together, I also have been hearing this argument that the side effects of the screen addiction is that people's attention spans aren't long enough to let deep relationships develop, or for people to even have the patience to see them through.
So because everybody have a short attention span now, when it comes to dealing with a person, people don't want to deal with that person for too long because they lose interest and their attention is not on that person anymore. They looking at somebody else now. Like, you probably been talking to that person for a week, 2 weeks, and they already got their eyes on somebody else.
Like, these days, it's pretty common for people to send a DM but not follow up or follow through, which I find is, again, just so interesting, because it was only a decade ago where ghosting someone was the greatest offense of all time, but now it's just par for the course.
I've been ghosted so many times that I just treat every text like that's the last time I'm going to hear from them.
and it doesn't help.
Just to be clear, I don't want this to be confused with the narrative going around on the internet that women just aren't giving men a chance, because that's not what I'm talking about. People should have the freedom to walk away if that's what they feel like. There is, in fact, a difference between leaving someone high and dry and having standards. Just wanted to say in case anyone was about to hit me with some manosphere takes. But that brings us to the fact that plenty of Gen Zers are perfectly happy staying single. A 2022 study found that compared to every other generation, Gen Z reports the highest satisfaction with being single and the highest overall outlook on life. This is likely because there's far less stigma around being single than there used to be.
The idea of being romantically involved with a man ever again feels so counterintuitive to my health and happiness that I don't even entertain the fantasy of meeting the right person anymore.
I do fear that this is more of a women's mindset than a male's, and I did find some support for that suspicion. Researchers found that women fared better flying solo than men. They are happier with their single status, the quality of their lives, the quality of their sex lives, and they desire a partner less. My preliminary thought on this is it's because the patriarchy has ingrained in men that their value comes from being providers. Meanwhile, women tend to have stronger friendships and emotional networks. But I will stop there though, because I do want to do a separate deep dive into this topic in the context of the manosphere, so we'll get to it later. But to sum this chapter up, with such a large portion of this generation choosing to be single, naturally the wedding industry will be taking a big hit moving forward. Okay, final thoughts. I just find it so cool that we're rewriting what weddings are and that we can get rid of all the fluff and all the just things you're supposed to do. I mean, this is coming from someone who already had their like dream wedding or like big wedding. I don't know, we had 100 people. So maybe it's easier to imagine having a small wedding. Overall, I think that this is the best option, the best evolution of weddings yet, that we're going back to the basics where it's just about you and your partner and focusing on what's important to you. But that is all I have for you today. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't and check out the merch. All the proceeds go to the SA Foundation, which helps women get out of the trafficking industry. And my wish for you is that if you have a wedding, you don't have to invite those second cousins that you never talk to. Bye.
You're not getting it. It's not clocking to you. It's not clocking to you that I'm standing on business, is it?